Okay, this video is to assist with sections 6.3 and 6.4. Just to revisit section 6.2, 6.2 what we were doing was factoring trinomials. And the trinomial would be in this form here, which is x squared plus bx plus c, where b and c are numbers. Now, when we set it up, and remember, it's just factoring is just the reverse of multiplication. We used the FOIL method in previous chapters, so we would come up with an answer like that. But now we're going to factor it out. And when we're factoring, we're going to set it up in this form. So that's what we learned. So the first thing we learned that this x squared, we're going to set it up on each side of the parenthesis. Now, how we come up with our operators here, this is where we learned about this. When you go down below, you can see where if it's the same sign, and here's a sign, you can see it's a positive. Now, whenever it's a positive, so it would be in this position here, if you have an addition sign, is what I should say. When it's an addition sign, when you look over to the next position, which is right here, and you can see we have one here. So let me erase this. Again, we can see that if there's an addition sign, we know it's going to be the same sign. What sign? Well, if you look over here in this position, and you can see, again, it's this position here, that determines what sign it is. So you can see in this example, we have a plus, so we're going to have both of them will be an addition sign. But over here, it's the same sign, but both of them will be minus signs when you break it out. So this is just a rule that you need to remember. Now, the next one down below, it will be opposite signs whenever you see a minus, which is in this position here. Whenever you have a minus sign, and you can see these are the two examples right here down below. If there's a minus sign there, then you know your signs are going to be opposite, and you can see in these examples. But what we learned, so what we did is we got into this position here and we set it up. We have our x, then we determine if it's going to be plus, minus, or a plus and a minus. Now, when we get down below and we have to determine if it's opposite signs, we don't know the layout until we go ahead and we take this number, and then when you multiply these two, which would be 2x, and this is a minus 2x, and this one's a plus 8x, and when you add them up, does it give you this result? And you can see a plus 8x and a negative 2x does give you the result of 6x plus 6x when you're adding those up. Now, when you look over here to the other example, you can see that they have this one set up correctly, because this here on this side is a negative 8x, and then when you multiply this one and that one, that would be a positive 2x, and that does give you a negative, a minus 6x. So that is what you were doing, is you first had to set it up just like this, determine this, if it's the same sign or if it's going to end up being the opposite sign. Once you have that set up, then you have to think about the factors of whatever C is. Now, C, you can see here's 16. So, in our example, and factors meaning that factors for 16 could be 16 times 1, or it could be 8 times 2, or it could be 4 times 4. What of these two factors, when you add them, will give you the number in the middle? And you can see the factors that worked were 8 times 2, and they use those. That way, it sets it up to give you the value of the center one, which is the bx. Sorry about that. So that's the work we worked on in our previous homework. Now, where are we going into these new sections? Well, in these new sections, the new material will be that they're just going to make it a one step higher. I'm sorry, I can't get that erased. So one step higher, meaning that this part right here, the x squared, they're going to now have a coefficient in front of it, meaning you're going to end up with some kind of problem where you may have 16x squared. So that means that we're not going to be able to just set it up with x's there. Now we're either going to have to set up if it was like, it would be easy enough. It was like, if it was a 5x, then we know we could easily just put a 5 here and then keep this one as an x. But what if you have a number like 16? You might have to break it up as 16 and 1, or it might be 4 and 4, 8 and 2. So that's where the new challenge is going to be, where we're going to have numbers here now too, so that not only will this, the two numbers, the two factors you select will need to add up to that, we're also going to have to make sure that whatever our coefficient is there, that these add up. Whatever numbers we're using here will add up to this number also. So I know it doesn't make any sense until I actually start showing you some examples, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that logic first. So let's move on to section 6.3. Now 6.3, they give you this example. They're asking you to factor this, and you can see right here where they set it up. Here's the actual problem. And then when you look at the problem, this is where they start to set it up. You can see that it's going to be the same sign because it has a plus here. So plus means it's going to be the same sign, and a subtraction means the two signs will be subtraction. Now that's how we did it previously. But however, things are going to change because now we're dealing with these numbers here. Now you notice we have an 8x squared. So same sign right here. So you can see they just started with the addition sign because whenever you add values up, wait a minute, let me see how I can explain this better. Well, anyways, I think they were just showing that as a format. So let's just focus down below here. So we're going to start from this line down below. Oops, sorry about that. So now when we're dealing with this problem, we have 5. So we learned we have to come up with our factors of 5. So if we have 5 times 1, those will be the factors with the product being 5. Now if we focus down here below, you can see they set it up the way we saw in those previous rules. If we have an addition sign, we know the signs will be the same and the two signs will be that negative. So what they did is, and again, now we're dealing with this 8x squared. So all you can do is trial and error. You set it up and maybe you try your 8x this way and x over on this side, just like we were doing it previously, but now we have this coefficient. And then we're going to use the factors 5 and 1. So we set it up and we take these two outer pieces. So let me erase all this. So if you look at this, we take the two outer ones, 8x and this negative 5, and we multiply those, and you can see we come up with this negative 40x. And you take care of the inner ones also. And when you take care of the inner ones, you end up with negative 1x. Now, following our rules, our integer rules, when we take a negative 1 and we add it to a negative 40x, we end up with an answer of negative 41x. And when you go up here to the original equation, you can see that our inner value should be a negative 22x. All right, so if you look down, so they're telling you right here, the middle term, this is the result of it, is incorrect. All right, so now when we go down to the next approach, so whatever approach they use, again, they're showing you that it's going to be incorrect. So all they did is, if you look down below, they just flopped and switched around the 1 and the 5 and just put it in a different position. When they put it in a different position, this ends up being the result. Now, when you multiply 8x by negative 1, you end up with a negative 8 result. And then when you take your two inner pieces, you end up with a negative 5x. Now, sorry, I was just pausing looking at the time. Now, when you have these, you can see when you add them up, you end up with a negative 13. So that didn't work. So you can look down below, and they're saying, okay, let's keep this 1 and a 5 in original position there. And let's break up this 8x and maybe make it a 4x and a 2x. You can see now where you have to manipulate those numbers too. So now when you take the two outer parts, you end up with a negative 20 when you multiply those. And then when you multiply these two inner parts, you end up with a negative 2x. And if you can see, that does give you the correct middle term right here. So you can see with these problems, they're going to be a little more time consuming than what we did in our previous chapters, because you have a little bit more that you got to play around with until you get the correct factoring set up with the correct middle term as explained here. All right. So when you look at it in this view, they want you to factor this out. So here's our problem right here. When we look at this problem, I think I just jumped a screen. Yeah, so when we look at this problem, all right, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to look to see, is there anything with these numbers that are common that I can factor something out? So it doesn't look like I can, so there's nothing to factor out there. So now I'm just going to start dealing with it. Now they explain to you, just take your factors for, remember we have to think about the factors for the first and the last term now. So we have these factors here. Well, when we have 10x squared, that could be either 10x times x, or it could either be 2x times 5x. There's your two options of factors. For the next one down, we have a negative. Now we have to deal with a negative 3y squared. That could either be negative 3 times y, or you could have it as a positive 3y times a negative y. These are your options. And then when you go down below, you can see, so you can see the very first, this one here is a negative, so we know we're going to have opposite signs. But you can see the strategies, the different ways they're going to go down, and they're going to use these different approaches, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And each time they're going to come up and see what their middle term is. So you can see where they give you several examples here, and every one they try, every scenario is not successful until you get down to this one. So you have to try several different scenarios with these different factors. So let me just go ahead and take these and circle these again. These are our options. Now when you can see when you go down, they either have it set up like this, or it's set up in the opposite direction, or you have it in the same direction but different numbers. So you just want to go ahead, when you get an opportunity, take a look at the pattern. You can see where the first one they decided, where here's our factors 10x and x. And in this one, they used the same factors, they just switched it around. Where down below, they used the next one, the 5x times 2x. And then here, they just switched it around. They kept playing around with the position of the factors until they end up getting the correct first term, middle term, and last term. And it's a trial and error method with these factors, and also with these plus and minus signs here, and how do you position those. All right, so the next slide is just another example there with the same strategy. I recommend that you take a look at that, take a few moments. The next one is just a helpful hint, just what I was showing you. You can see as you're going down through those several examples to show you how they end up with the incorrect term until they finally got to the correct one. They're just showing you here that, just suggesting that when you set it up, just switch the signs around first to outrule certain factors before you switch things out. And again, the goal is to get to this middle term. Next problem is exactly what I was just showing you. The only thing that's different about this one now, if you see there's a 24, a 40, and a 6, you can easily factor out a 2. And you can see that we have a variable x, x4 to the third power and a second power. Means the lowest one you can go ahead and factor that out. Remember our greatest common factor? So that's right here, the greatest common factor. So we're going to factor that out. So when we factor it out, our numbers are lower. They're easier to deal with. Once you factor that out, for each one, you're going to have to come up with the factors. So you can see that's what they did here. They came up with the factors. There's several different options for that. And then they came up with the factors for 3, and these are your 2 factors. And you could see where you're always going to bring this along, what you factored out. But here's the pattern here of how to set it up to look at the middle term to make sure you get the correct middle term. So please take a minute and look at that. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have to make a part 2. I only get 15 minutes for free. So let me go ahead and stop this, and I'll start making a part 2 video.